Right now, in a plastic bucket behind a grocery store, a silent biological engine is duplicating its own mass every 48 hours. While the global supply chain for essential nutrients is fracturing under its own weight, a zero-cost solution is floating on the surface of a stagnant pond, waiting to be noticed. Most people see a green film on water and think of it as a nuisance or a sign of decay. But if you look closer, you aren't looking at waste, you're looking at the highest concentration of life-sustaining fatty acids ever recorded in the plant kingdom. This isn't just about survival. It's about an accidental loophole in biology that allows you to harvest pharmaceutical-grade nutrition for the price of a 5-gallon bucket. But here, where it gets interesting. We've been conditioned to believe that omega-3s, the building blocks of our brain and heart health, must come from the deep ocean. We've been told we need massive fishing fleets, industrial processing plants, and expensive gold-tinted capsules to stay healthy. The reality is that the fish don't even make the omega-3s. They get them from the same place you're about to, a microscopic, self-seeding powerhouse that requires no soil, no fertilizer, and exactly 5 minutes of your time to set up. Think about the last time you bought a bottle of high-quality supplements. You paid for the plastic, the marketing, and the fuel for a boat. You didn't pay for the biology. Wolffia, commonly known as duckweed, is the smallest flowering plant on Earth, and it is arguably the most efficient protein factory ever designed by nature. Under the right conditions, a single handful of this plant can cover an entire lake in weeks. It doesn't need a tractor. It doesn't need a PhD. It just needs a container and a basic understanding of light. If you take a standard bucket and fill it with water, you've already completed 90% of the infrastructure. Add a starter culture of duckweed, which can be found in almost any natural freshwater source, and the clock starts ticking. Because it lacks a complex root system, the plant devotes 100% of its energy to leaf production. It is a biological solar panel that stores energy not as wood or fiber, but as nutrient-dense biomass. That's not the full story, though. The real magic happens in the harvest cycle. Most crops require months of waiting and a single high-stakes harvest. If the frost hits or the rain stops, you lose everything. But with a bucket-based aquatic system, the harvest is daily. You skim the top, leave a small percentage behind, and by the time you wake up the next morning, the gaps have already begun to close. It is a literal fountain of biological wealth that ignores the traditional rules of agriculture. You might wonder why, if this is so effective, we aren't all eating pond scum for breakfast. The answer isn't scientific, it's economic. You cannot patent a plant that grows in a bucket. You cannot trademark a substance that duplicates itself for free in a backyard. There is no incentive for a multi-billion-dollar wellness industry to tell you that your nutritional independence is sitting in a puddle. Our entire food system is built on the idea of centralized complexity, the belief that if something is good for you, it must be difficult to acquire. But nature prefers decentralized simplicity. When you look at the nutritional profile, the logic becomes undeniable. Duckweed contains all 9 essential amino acids and a ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 that rivals wild-caught salmon. It's a complete protein source that grows faster than any land-based crop. Yet, because it doesn't fit into a box on a shelf, it remains a hidden truth, relegated to the edges of our awareness. And this changes everything about how we view food security. Imagine a row of these buckets on a balcony or a small patch of dirt. You aren't just growing a salad, you're running a miniature refinery. The maintenance involves nothing more than ensuring the water level stays consistent. Because the plant is self-seeding, you never have to buy another seed again. It is a closed-loop system where the only input is sunlight, and the only output is pure, unadulterated nutrition. There is a specific realization that hits when you first skim a handful of bright green grains from your own water source. It's the realization that the scarcity we are often sold is an architectural choice, not a biological reality. We have been taught to look toward the horizon for our needs, when the solution has been floating right under our noses, thriving in the places we've been told to ignore. This isn't just a hobbyist's experiment, it is a fundamental shift in the power dynamic between the consumer and the source. When you can generate your own essential nutrients for $0, the entire concept of the cost of living begins to shift. The bucket is just a container. The water is just a medium. The real breakthrough is the understanding that you don't need a permission slip from the industrial food complex to feed your brain. We've spent decades looking for the next superfood in the rainforests or the deep sea, hopping for a miracle in a bottle. Maybe it's time we looked at the humble, fast-growing green film in the bucket and asked ourselves why we were told to look away in the first place. If the most powerful nutritional source on the planet is currently growing for free in your neighbor's pond, what else have we been told is impossible? Take a look at what's growing in the shadows of the official food system, and you might find the future of your health is already waiting for you. The beauty of this system isn't just in the biology, it's in the defiance of it. We are taught that value is derived from effort, yet here is a mechanism that rewards nothing but observation. When you realize that a 5-gallon bucket can outproduce a traditional garden bed in protein density without a single bag of soil, the way you look at a grocery store changes forever. But there is a catch that most preppers and health enthusiasts miss. While the plant is a nutritional powerhouse, it is also a biological sponge. It reflects the environment it lives in. If your water is pure, the harvest is medicine. If your water is contaminated, the harvest is a toxin. This is why the 5-minute setup requires a specific kind of intention. You aren't just growing a plant, you are managing a liquid ecosystem. The difference between a lifetime of free nutrition and a failed experiment comes down to how you balance the pH and keep the water from becoming stagnant. And this is where the logic of the industry finally falls apart. They want you to believe that purity can only be achieved in a laboratory with white coats and stainless steel. But the truth is, a simple charcoal filter and a bit of aeration are all it takes to turn a backyard corner into a high-grade production facility. We have traded our autonomy for the convenience of a label, forgetting that we are perfectly capable of monitoring our own inputs. Every time you skim that green layer, you are opting out of a global shipping network that burns millions of gallons of fuel just to deliver a plastic bottle to your door. You are bypassing the middleman, the marketing, and the markups. It feels like a glitch in the matrix because, for the modern consumer, it actually is. But here's the final realization. The reason this remains hidden isn't because of a secret society or a grand cover-up. It's hidden because it is too simple to be profitable. You cannot build an empire on a plant that grows in a bucket behind a shed. You cannot monetize something that anyone can replicate with a trip to a local pond and a spare piece of plastic. The most revolutionary thing you can do in a world of rising costs is to find the things that nature gives away for free and then learn how to harvest them. The bucket is ready. The water is waiting. The only thing missing is the willingness to look at pond scum and see it for what it truly is: freedom. If you're ready to stop buying your health and start growing it, the first step is smaller than you think. Do you know where the nearest source of still water is? The shift from consumer to producer starts with a single, tactile moment. The first time you feel the weight of a harvest that cost you nothing but a 5-minute setup. When you hold a handful of this vibrant green biomass, you aren't just holding food, you're holding a biological insurance policy. In an era of hyperinflation and fragile supply chains, the ability to generate essential fatty acids in a footprint no larger than a stepping stone is the ultimate leverage. But we have to address the elephant in the room. If this is so effective, why is it relegated to the fringes of survivalist forums and niche botany? The answer lies in the psychology of the cost bias. We have been conditioned to believe that if a nutrient is vital, it must be expensive or difficult to obtain. We equate price with potency. When something is free, we assume it's worthless. This is the structural barrier that keeps people tethered to the supplement aisle. We are more comfortable paying $40 for a processed pill than we are trusting a bucket of water. That's not the full story, however. The real friction is aesthetic. We have been sanitized. We've been taught that food comes from sterile plastic or perforated cardboard, not from a living, breathing aquatic ecosystem in our backyard. Yet the same people who recoil at the idea of pond plants will happily consume lab-grown additives and synthetic binders found in commercial health products. We've traded the raw, messy efficiency of nature for the clean, expensive illusion of the laboratory. But here, where the realization turns into action. The moment you break that aesthetic barrier, the math becomes undeniable. 1 bucket becomes 3, 3 buckets become a shelf. Suddenly, you aren't just supplementing, you're generating a surplus. You realize that the scarcity of omega-3s is a manufactured crisis. The ocean isn't running out of nutrients, it's just that we've forgotten how to harvest them at the source. This isn't about becoming a chemist or a commercial farmer. It's about reclaiming a basic human right, the right to nutritional independence. It's about looking at a piece of waste water and seeing a reservoir of potential. The technology isn't in the bucket. The technology is in the DNA of the plant itself, which has been perfecting this process for millions of years. We are standing at a crossroads between two futures, one where our health is a subscription service we pay for every month, and another where it is a self-sustaining cycle we manage with our own hands. The barrier to entry is 5 minutes and a container. The industrial world will continue to ignore the bucket because it has no choice. It cannot compete with free. But you have a choice. You can continue to buy the bottle, or you can start the cycle. The infrastructure for your future health isn't coming from a laboratory. It's already here, waiting in the stillness of the water. Have you ever wondered what else the world has labeled as weeds, simply because they couldn't find a way to sell them to you? The final realization hits when you stop seeing the bucket as a container and start seeing it as a decentralized power plant. In a world obsessed with high-tech, biohacking, and expensive wearable monitors, we've overlooked the most sophisticated biotechnology on the planet because it doesn't require a charging cable. We are looking for the future of nutrition in silicon and synthetic compounds, while the actual solution is sitting in a $5 bucket of water, silently duplicating its DNA. But this isn't just about personal health, it's a systemic glitch. If 10% of households in a single city decided to grow their own omega-3s, the industrial fishing and supplement complex would lose millions of dollars in a single quarter. The reason you don't see how-to guides for duckweed on the side of a cereal box isn't because the science is shaky, it's because the economics are terrifying to those in power. A population that can grow its own brain fuel is a population that is significantly harder to manipulate through artificial scarcity. And this changes the definition of wealth entirely. True wealth isn't a digits on a screen bank balance that can be eroded by inflation or frozen by a bank. True wealth is the ability to produce your own biological needs using nothing but the sun and a bit of recycled water. It's the peace of mind that comes from knowing that even if the trucks stop running and the shelves go empty, your pond's scum will still be doubling in mass every 48 hours. That's not the full story, though. The most profound shift happens in your own mind. When you take responsibility for a single bucket of life, you begin to see the world as a series of interconnected flows rather than a series of transactions. You stop being a target demographic for a wellness brand and start being a steward of your own biology. You realize that the most potent medicines are often the ones that have been right in front of us all along, hidden behind the labels of weed or nuisance. The experiment is simple. The cost is zero. The installation is 5 minutes. We have spent centuries trying to conquer nature, trying to force it into rows and boxes and laboratories. But the ultimate victory isn't in conquest, it's in cooperation. It's in letting a tiny, floating plant do what it has done for millions of years, turn light into life. The bucket is just the invitation. The industrial world will tell you this is a hobby. The biology will tell you it's a revolution. The water is still, the sun is out. The only remaining question is, why are you still waiting for a bottle to arrive in the mail? If the most essential building block of your brain is currently growing for free in a bucket, what other unsolvable problems are actually just 5 minutes away from being fixed? The true scale of this biological loophole doesn't reveal itself until the first harvest. When you skim that vibrant, emerald carpet and realize that you've produced more bioavailable protein per square inch than a cattle ranch, the traditional food pyramid begins to look like a house of cards. We've been taught that high-quality nutrition requires vast acreage and industrial scale, yet the most nutrient-dense plant on the planet thrives in a space no larger than a dinner plate. But here, where the realization turns into a radical shift in perspective. Most people worry about the collapse of the food system as a distant, theoretical event. They don't realize that for the average person, the system has already failed. It has failed to provide affordable, unadulterated nutrients without a side of microplastics or heavy metals. By moving your omega-3 production from the industrial ocean to a controlled bucket, you aren't just prepping, you are opting out of a broken contract. You are taking the centralized out of your survival. And this changes the way we think about the future of our cities. Imagine an urban landscape where every balcony, every rooftop, and every neglected alleyway is a node in a decentralized nutritional grid. We don't need a breakthrough in lab-grown meat to solve the protein crisis. We just need to stop killing the weeds that are already trying to feed us. The barrier to global food security isn't a lack of resources, it's a lack of imagination. We are surrounded by abundance, but we've been trained to see it as a mess that needs to be cleaned up. That's not the full story, though. The most quiet, subversive benefit of the bucket system is the time it gives back to you. Industrial agriculture is a war against the clock, against pests, and against the soil. This aquatic system is a partnership. It requires no weeding, no tilling, and no heavy lifting. It is the ultimate passive income for your body. Once the cycle is established, the plant does the work, and you simply collect the interest. It is a rare thing in the modern world to find something that is both free and superior to its paid alternative. We are skeptical of too good to be true, because in the marketplace it usually is. But nature doesn't have a marketing budget or a quarterly earnings report. It only has efficiency. The plant doesn't care about your bank account, it only cares about the light. The 5-minute installation isn't just a time-saving tip, it's a portal. On one side is a life spent as a consumer, forever dependent on a complex, fragile web of corporations. On the other side is a life where your most vital needs are met by a bucket and a bit of sunlight. The world is noisy, expensive, and increasingly complicated, but in a quiet corner behind a shed or on a windowsill, a silent revolution is duplicating itself. The water is ready, the sun is free, the choice to stop being a customer and start being a producer is entirely yours. If a 5-gallon bucket can dismantle a billion-dollar industry, what other, small changes are we overlooking that could rewrite the rules of our lives? The future isn't something that happens to you, it's something you grow. What's stopping you from starting your first harvest today? The ultimate irony of our modern age is that we've built a civilization capable of splitting the atom and mapping the genome, yet we struggle to provide basic, clean nutrition to the average person without an environmental or financial crisis. We have looked to the stars and the deep trenches of the ocean for the next great breakthrough, while the most efficient survival technology on the planet has been waiting patiently in the stagnant water of a roadside ditch. But here is the final, uncomfortable truth. The bucket isn't just about omega-3s or protein. It is a mirror. It reflects our own dependence back at us and asks why we've traded our autonomy for a convenience that isn't actually convenient. We spend 40 hours a week working to buy the very things that nature is trying to grow for us in the cracks of the sidewalk. The 5-minute installation is a test of our own willingness to step outside the script of the modern consumer and trust a process that hasn't changed in 10 million years. And this changes the way you move through the world. Once you see the potential in a bucket of water, you stop seeing waste and start seeing opportunity. You stop seeing weeds and start seeing fuel. The world stops being a place of scarcity and begins to look like a canvas of untapped abundance. This is the hidden architecture of true resilience. It is small, it is quiet, and it is entirely under your control. The industrial food complex will continue to grow larger, more complex, and more expensive, but the water in your bucket will remain still, the sun will continue to rise, and the green film will continue to double. You don't need a revolution to change your life, you just need to stop ignoring the miracles that are already happening for free. The system is ready, the biology is proven, the cost is zero. The only thing left to decide is whether you want to remain a spectator in the story of your own health, or if you're ready to pick up the bucket and start the cycle. True independence isn't something you buy, it's something you harvest. Now that you know the truth about the water, what other, free secrets is nature hiding in plain sight?